Okay, now on to lesson 16. Same thing as the previous lessons. I'm going through 1819 version, but as you can see, we're going over the same thing. So what lesson 16 covers is collision detection. What happens when our sprites hit another sprite, hit parameters, whatever. With parameters, we dealt that a little bit with our velocity in the last lesson. What happens when a sprite's X or Y reaches a certain parameter. So the is touching, we're looking more at multiple sprites. I believe in this lesson we'll take a look at a flybot game. If it's not in this lesson, you can see on my previous posts where I shared the games of, um, that flybot game, we had a coin, we had a sun, we had a flybot. Those were sprites, and certain things happen when those sprites touched each other. Okay? And we'll take a look at different ways that you can use the is touching and different reactions. Now this is going to take some time for you to kind of study and see um, how those affect sprites and what exactly you want to happen to your sprites when there is a collision. So here's something, the frog jump from the last one. Um, what is happening when the mushroom, which is a sprite, hits the frog, which is a sprite. Okay, we want the frog's velocity to change as we jump over the mushroom, but when those two collide, when we have them touching each other, notice that the mushroom changes. And what that is basically a different sprite. It's a mushroom leaning to the right. So what is happening in this code that you can't see right now, it's behind the scenes, and you will have the same one on your screen, is collision detection. Okay, so here we have a lot going on with this collision detection. Now down here we are moving the tack around with arrows. Okay, so this tack is moving as we hit the up, down, left, and right arrows, and then once that tack touches the balloon, it's changing the balloon to this pop animation. Okay, a lot happening. Here we have our variables of the balloon and the tack, but we're saying if, we're not dealing with collision yet, but we're setting all of these different parameters, if you will, for the balloon to be popped, if the tack is in a certain position. Okay, all this code is done for you. You don't have to type any of this, but you can kind of take a look. A lot happening there behind the scenes. That's why we have, as we're going to learn here in this lesson, that's why we have this is touching property or command, so we can take a look at what exactly happens when one sprite is touching another. If we didn't have it, we'd have to come up with all this, and that's definitely head scratching, head hurting. So thank goodness for the is touching property in command. Okay, tack again. Now we have this is touching command that you can see here. If the tack is touching balloon, well, what is the balloon? Well, the balloon is this variable that we have created. So if one variable or one sprite, sorry, is touching this other balloon, what do we want to happen? Really simple. We just want the balloon animation to change, and that's it. Nothing else is happening. Now, what are some things realistically that we could do, to change this, or when these sprites are touching each other? we are changing the animation to a pop. We could have a popping sound. We could have a full-on animation of something to happen. This a balloon completely destroying. A lot of different things that we could do. We're keeping it simple. If the tack dot is touching, noticed all of the case and parentheses in here. If the tack is touching the balloon, then we simply just want the balloon animation to change. Okay. And that was definitely a lot easier than the last one. Now this one gets a little crazy on mine because I start dealing with sounds. Okay, you can take a look at this and kind of play around with sounds on your own if you wish. Problem with that is the blender never stops, so kind of annoying. So I'm gonna take that. I'm gonna take that out of there. We're gonna get rid of this sound because that's pretty annoying. Oops. Definitely don't want my bracket to go away. Okay. So what happens is the blender starts to shake when that apple goes in because they are touching each other. Okay. Now going back here to visibility. Okay. Right now the apple's visibility is true. What happens? Okay. So if the apple touches the blender, so it goes into the blender, a lot of different things are happening. The blender starts to shake by this negative number to positive number, just random numbers. The blender is going to shake back and forth, and we're turning that apple visibility off. We set the apple's velocity to 5 to give it the look that it is falling, okay, and we're setting that to 0 once it hits the blender. Okay, that's what's happening there. Sound gets tricky, so I don't suggest you do that or you get that annoying blender sound that I had. Okay, same thing, making sounds. Be careful as you go through here, and it gets tricky with sounds, when to start, when to stop. But you can go through the play sound here, play sound URL. We'll open that up and you can add to that. And you can definitely see examples of your code of how that happens. Okay, you can learn, play around with sound here. Okay, so the collision detection here, and as we move on to lesson 17, we'll get into bouncing off and things like that. More control over collision detection. Here we're changing the sprite as the rainbow goes over the regular horse, turns it into this rainbow unicorn, I guess. Okay. Here we have rainbow velocity. If the rainbow is touching the horse, then change it to a unicorn again. Different sprites here. Okay. Here just looking at the debug. Okay. Okay, mine is fixed on my end. Okay. So you'll want to debug yours on this. You want it to pop at the right time. So take a look through your code, find, and you can compare it to mine, but you'll want to debug that. Okay, dealing with the score. Now this is, doing, adding this to your games is going to make your games a lot more interactive, okay, because, in all games we keep score somehow, okay. As I hit the caret, that caret, the X position, I'm sorry, the Y position changes as it moves from right to left on my screen. As it moves from right to left, my X velocity is going at a negative integer. Okay, caret dot velocity X equals -5. Okay, so let's take a look through my code, see what's happening. Okay, so my variable score here is set to 0. Okay, um, this is going to be the score up here and how it changes. Here's my background. So now I'm going to draw the score and take a look right here. My text is black, my text size is 20. Now my text of my score, understand or notice the difference here. One word score is in quotation marks, one is not. When you put text in quotation marks, it is actually going to display that text there. Okay? Here I am calling on the variable that I have defined here. That variable was 0. I set it to 0. And then these are the coordinates of my text where I want them placed, my X, my Y, and then my height and my width. And so I'm placing these at different positions, but every time, so this score right here, this is my numbers. Okay, so where is score changing? Right down here. Okay, now it's my is touching. Every time my bunny is hitting the caret, then I want something to happen to my score. Now your games, if you add obstacles like in my mushroom game, my frog game, as you jump over the mushroom, your score increases. When you hit the mushroom, your score decreases. Right now, we're only dealing with an increasing score. So when the bunny, or if the bunny is touching the caret, here, your caret resets to a different number. Your X stays the same because it's resetting off the screen to the right, but it is giving it a random Y coordinate. And here, my score equals score plus 1. That is the increasing of the score for every time that I touch the caret. And we can look at my bunny Y. The key went down, my up arrow. Okay, here's the velocity that is changing. Okay, so you can take a look at that. But look through this, see how we incorporate a score into that, apply that to your own games as well. You can always refer back to this on how we get that score to appear. And if you copied and pasted all of this stuff with the score, you would get that in the top left-hand corner. Okay, here's my game again. You can see, you can go back through my link, look through my code, see how I incorporated the score, velocity, and everything there. Okay, a lot of different things here with collision detection. Okay, one thing we did not go over that you can go over on your own and play around with is the set collider. Notice that the collider, the collision detection here around this, okay, smaller, and this is a circle. Here I've set the collider here to a circle. The circle would work for your balloon. It collapses the collider, so it's not, this is kind of the default here, the square around it. Doesn't necessarily work for a circular object. So you can mess around with the set collider. You can take a look at examples and see how you can make that change for the is touching. In the next lesson, lesson 17, we're going to go over bouncing off, which deals with collision detection that we learned here in lesson 16. Again, any questions, please email me. You can comment on the Google Classroom posts so that everyone can see. Happy coding, and we will see you in our Zoom also if you have any questions. Bye.